Hello, this is some old guy in Hawaii with another look at the 2022 Borderlands hunt, a scavenger hunt within Borderlands that's also a charity fundraiser for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. It runs from 9 a.m. October 28th to just before midnight, November 6th, Eastern Standard Time. There's a link to the official website, which contains, among other things, the rules. This video assumes that if you're doing the hunt, you have read those rules. Now, this hunt is being run in Borderlands 2, not Borderlands 3, which was the home of the last two hunts. And Borderlands 2 is a very different animal from Borderlands 3. Some people struggle with and think UVHM and by extension OP levels are too hard. Others find those features challenging and enjoyable. Many others, including me, are somewhere in between. With that in mind, this video analyzes the list of items, or rather their primary sources, grouping things together primarily by increasing farming difficulty. This can aid players in deciding what to farm and when, and perhaps what to ignore. We refer a lot to a custom spreadsheet created for this hunt that is linked below, as well as a video that goes with that. I had hoped to do two more videos, one on general strategies, what to farm, in what order and why, and another on general hunt tips, but with the hunt less than a week away, probably not going to happen. This Borderlands 2 hunt list has 160 pieces of gear worth 990 points total, plus a point given for each OP level the player reaches up to level 10, for a total of 170 line items, or just items from now on, and 1,000 points. That compares to 369 items on the last Borderlands 3 hunt list. It's a smaller list, but actually a longer, harder hunt given the need to repeat some content. Point values vary from 3 to 11. I'm not going to discuss specific gear point values. You can read the list. In any case, these point values don't necessarily indicate how easy or difficult it is to obtain each item. On the one hand, they don't take into consideration the ability to farm at a lower difficulty setting. Per the rules, we are allowed to drop back down one level of difficulty. If we are in tvhm, we can drop back down to normal at any time. Once we start UVHM, we can only drop back down to tvhm, advance to OP1, and we can only drop back down to UVHM, etc. A good hunt player will use this to maximum advantage, because farming in tvhm is a whole lot faster and easier than doing it in UVHM. Using a level 80 character and gear to farm level 50 content is by definition easier than content that's on level. On the other hand, some items can only be farmed at higher difficulty levels and or play levels and or only from raid bosses. Difficulty levels naturally increase the challenge. Raid bosses are a challenge all their own, and combining them usually presents the greatest challenge of all. So we'll start with items that can be farmed in normal or tvhm, mostly exclusives of raid bosses. Okay, mostly. Okay. Then we'll break out the UVHM restricted items, starting with those that don't drop from raid bosses. We'll then do a brief overview of raid bosses, some of which can be farmed on normal for their drops, a few on tvhm, and a number only on UVHM and above, so difficulty can vary. Lastly, we'll break out the UVHM restricted items that primarily drop from raid bosses. These are the really hard ones. We will briefly mention OP levels at the very end. Now, some items are level limited. They don't drop unless we farm their sources on level 61 or 62 and above. And these levels require us to be in UVHM or above. We will reference these minimums as appropriate. Level minimums, however, don't really present a tougher challenge except in OP levels, and we are only looking at primary sources here, none of which require OP levels. Normal mode, tvhm, and UVHM mode difficulty differences aside, player and enemy level health and shields go up together. Yes, tvhm and UVHM spawn more badasses and ultimate badasses, but we as players get access to more and better skills as we level up. So we'll reference player level, but not break anything out by it. 66 base game items, 29 DLC items, and 3 items that drop from chubby, tubby enemies anywhere we find them have no difficulty mode, level, or raid boss requirements. These 98 items should be the easiest drops to farm. Get to a higher player level at a higher difficulty setting, then drop back down one level to farm these quickly and easily. The 66 base game items and 28 of the 29 DLC items should be about equally easy. One DLC item, the Ogre Assault Rifle, only drops from a specific enemy in a specific round of the Myrtleland's Temple Circle of Slaughter, which becomes available only after completing the Tiny Tina DLC main story. Slaughters tend to be harder, but since there are no other restrictions, we can farm it easily on a lower difficulty with a much higher level character, although that may require doing that DLC more than once at different difficulty levels. In any case, the difficulty is more one of time, okay, having to get through the various slaughter rounds each run. Now, the 3 chubby tubby drops are a bit harder, but because of rarity, not the toughness of the enemy themselves. Yes, chubbies and tubbies are tankier and faster than their normal cousins, but again, get to a higher play level before dropping back down in difficulty to farm them easily. The hard part is getting to them as rare spawns to spawn in the first place. Now, 3 items drop only in TVHM or higher. 2 from Vermivorous in the main game, and 1 from Infected Badass Saplings in the Commander Lilith DLC. The saplings are badass versions of more common infected saplings or sprouts that spawn from infected pods. Hang out anywhere pods show up, and these appear with decent frequency, especially on higher difficulty levels. The highest part here is getting the actual item, the Nirvana SMG, which has only a 1% chance to drop from them. But they aren't that hard to spawn or farm, so not too bad. Vermivorous, on the other hand, is the 5th and final, and by extension, toughest evolved form of common Varkets. He's a raid boss. He's just not restricted to one location. Anywhere Varkets spawn, he can spawn. As tough as he is, however, in TVHM, he maxes out around 53, maybe level 56. In any case, if we get to a higher level in UVHM, say max level 80, then drop back down to TVHM, he should not be much of a challenge. The hard part is getting him to spawn in the first place. We first have to get a Varket to pod up and evolve into an adult Varket. Then we have to get it to do it again 4 more times. The badass, then super badass, then ultimate badass, and then Vermivorous. Spend a lot of time getting him to spawn, but should be an easy fight. Okay, that's all the normal and TVHM farming, 98 items. 44 others require us to be in UVHM or higher, meaning OP levels. Of those 44 UVH restricted items, 12 are pearlescents, 8 of which have no minimum level requirements, the other 4 dropping only on level 61 and up. Okay, the 8 unrestricted are world drops, no dedicated source, but they do have an increased chance to drop from tubbies and legendary loot message. We also might try to farm a good world drop source. Uranus is a really good farm for that. The other 4, level 61 and up restricted, must be farmed from tubby enemies to earn hunt points. Tubbies are also the only valid source for 18 other UVHM restricted drops, these being legendary class mods we referenced before that only drop at level 62 and above. Basically, once we hit level 62, we can start farming these 22 items. Now let's take a brief look at raid bosses as a group. 33 items have raid bosses as primary sources. Any raid boss can be a challenge. Some of the DLC raid bosses have mechanics that can be challenging in any difficulty mode. The assumption here is that the player understands and can handle the mechanics, and the real difficulty comes from taking them on either over-leveled at a lower difficulty level, normal or TVHM, or on the same level. Okay. With that in mind, 16 items drop from raid bosses in normal mode or above. 11 dropped from Terramorphous in the base game, 3 from Hatterax in the Commander Lilith DLC, and 1 each from Hyperius in Scarlet and the Drifter in the Hammerlock DLC, okay, the Dexy guy. Boss mechanics aside, a not insignificant challenge to these or any raid boss except for Vermivorous is that they require finishing the source content main story first. This may not only affect when we play through specific DLC content, but also the possible need to repeat some content, but we're not going to go into that in this video. Still, mechanics aside, these should be the easiest of the raid boss farm. That's easy in quotes, okay? 2 require us to be in TVHM or above, specifically from Vermivorous in the base game. We've already talked about him. Should be easy to beat, but incredibly time-consuming to spawn. And that leaves these 14 Seraph items drop from one of the 5 DLC raid bosses that come with the 4 longer DLCs. Okay, we can only access them after completing the DLC main stories, and we have to beat them and their associated mechanics in UVHM to get the desired drops. Even without level restrictions, these represent what are probably the toughest farms in the hunt. There's a way to possibly make 11 of the 14 a little less challenging, they have a secondary source, Seraph Fenders. Farm 1 boss instead of 4 for Seraph Crystals and buy the other drops instead. Still challenging, but you still might want to consider that to make things easier. That leaves 10 OP levels, each worth only a single point. Get to level 80 in UVHM, and we can run Digistruct Peak. Each time we do so successfully, we can go up an OP level, increasing the difficulty. Given the increasing difficulty and the limitation of only being able to drop back down one level, which affects everything else in the game, and the single point award per level, I strongly suggest this be left to the very end of the hunt. And that's it. Hopefully you can use this info to better plan what to farm, on what difficulty, and in what order. Hope to see a lot of you out there in the hunt. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know if I missed anything. And as always, stay safe, and thanks for watching.